You're listening to This Week in E-Commerce, the Ecom Nation podcast. Dive into the top online retail headlines with your hosts, Paul Waddy and Chia. Let's load up the cart. This Week in E-Commerce, episode 51. I am Chia, and with me this week is not Paul Waddy. Instead, even better, I have Alex Ross with me. Alex, how are you?
Hello, I am well. I love your podcast voice. Come straight into play there. I'm very happy to be here.
I'm very happy for you to be here. Alex, for those who don't know, is the business development manager at Searchspring, and as well as many other things. She has worn many hats throughout her career. I've had the good fortune of knowing Alex back from when she lived in Adelaide before, and she's now moved back to Adelaide. But you have had quite the career, and also recently named the Industry Rising Star of 2024, which congratulations, by the way. I was very proud to see you up there accepting the award.
I was very surprised, but thank you, Mal. Very humbled. It was it was awesome. It was really great.
And tell us a little bit about your career. Like, you've done quite a few things. Like before Searchspring, you've been in e-commerce and retail for years.
Yeah, I think it's always like one of those full circle where when you see where you're going, it makes sense when you look back, but at the time it didn't. So, during university, started on the shop floor when I was about 18 years old, made my way up to floor manager, then stock manager, then marketing manager. So I had that really strong brick and mortar understanding and experience. And then made my way into digital after university, into the old Google Ads, PPC, SEO world, which, it is what it is. And then a few other jobs there, and then landed myself at Searchspring. So for me, it's always just been that love for retail. That's been that common thread, and just moving from brick and mortar to online.
Yeah, that's definitely something which comes through really strong through your social media presence, but also just your general activity in the scene, and really making quite a name for yourself in the last couple of years. And like I said, I really enjoy, like, every time I go to any of these conferences, like, you're one of my favorite people to catch up with when I'm there. And I'm not just saying it because you're on the podcast right now.
Yep. Well, you too, Mal, that's for sure. It's fun to have a smiley face coming back at you. Obviously friendly faces are good, but interesting ones too.
Yeah, great. And recently you moved back to Adelaide. And I got to say, I'm very happy that you've moved back here, because it seems that there are a lot of people coming into our fair city at the moment, which is brilliant. Escaping the rat race in Sydney, which I did many years ago, and I'm glad to be living back in Adelaide now.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I always think it's funny, people that don't have great things to say about Adelaide, I'll ask them if they've ever been here, and they'll answer no, and that kind of speaks for itself, doesn't it?
It certainly does. I think everyone should come and visit. I get that a lot, actually. People asking, like, what's in Adelaide? Tell me something to do. And I think there's quite a few people who are going to be visiting this month, I believe. I think someone told me that Aaron Luxmore is going to be down end of the month, I heard. So I need to hit him up with some recommendations. And and Nat from Megantic, I believe, as well, is coming in a couple of months. So he was hitting me up for some recommendations.
Yeah,
it's all going to be wine and restaurants.
Exactly. Get the winery list out. How many days have you got? How many wineries do you want to make? And then you've got an itinerary from there.
Exactly. But you start with the varietals, I find. Like, if you like a Shiraz, you go to the Barossa. If you like a bit more cool climate, head to the Adelaide Hills. A lot to try.
Yeah.
A lot to try.
Oh, I find McLaren Vale's my favourite, because then you get the best of both worlds. You've got the beach, you've got the wineries, you're straight in the middle. It's a beautiful spot.
That is true. Well, look, you can't go wrong. Either you go to McLaren Vale or Barossa, you're set.
Yeah.
All right, we are totally digressing away from the topic, which is e-commerce. And we have, yet again, a lot of things to discuss, as usual, on this show. And this week has been no different. We're going to cover off the first topic, which we're going to cover off, is one which is a favorite on here, Shein and Temu. Some extraordinary results, which we've heard over the last week, in that 3.8 million Australians aged 14 and up have bought from Temu at least once in the last 12 months, and 2 million have bought at least once from Shein. Scary. But overall, they have generated a $3 billion annualized market share in Australia. That is just mind-boggling to me, that in such a short period of time. Like, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised, right?
Yeah, look, I'm not surprised at all. Like, they have such an amazing range, unbelievable prices, unbelievable terms when you start to look at their returns and how they deal with faulty and products that you don't like. So it's shocking, but it doesn't surprise me.
Why do you think they've been so popular? They've been able to gain such a huge market share in such a very short period of time.
It's one that I'll ask my friends both in e-commerce and without. And at the beginning, when you just specifically Temu, when you bring that up, they say, I'm scared by Temu. But I think that in the last 6 months, especially when they've seen, I think it was 32 to 34% increase in shoppers, that fear is decreasing when we start to know people that are using the platform, that confidence is growing. And then obviously just in the state of the economy today, any opportunity to get a bargain is where it's going to land in those shoppers, I think.
I think you kind of nailed it on the head there. Like you've got two things there. You've got like the value proposition of the fact that it is such a value play. You can go there, find very commoditized products at ultra low prices, but then also as people become more and more comfortable using the platforms. Well, I know that when I first went on there, I was like overwhelmed by just how many bells and whistles there were. It was like
Yes.
spin this, press this, you've got this discount, this shipping is going to be free if you order in the next 5 minutes. It was overwhelming. But I see so many people now who are just like, they enjoy it. They're just there. They're just overstimulated. It's like almost like a casino.
Yeah, it definitely has that kind of casino pull back, get a reward, keep on going, and then it really draws you in, right? So it's definitely addictive. And I think to just reading some of the articles before this, they've got such a strong return customer that once you're bought in, you're really bought in.
Hmm. And what do you think the challenges that is for local retailers? So an Australian retailer who is potentially competing against them. That's something which Paul and I have talked about quite a lot. But we're seeing more and more of that challenge. I know I really am when I speak to different retailers and when I look at their data and they say, hey, the last 6 months have been a real struggle for me. Instantly, you go to Google Ads and you look at the auction insights and you see Temu is just like dominating every single auction. How do you compete against that? Like it's going to be a bloodbath out there.
Yeah, it's a difficult pill to swallow. And like, it's not something that you feel great about being. I personally am a Temu shopper. I'll out myself in this situation. It's not great when you think about how that's affecting small businesses. One thing that you and Paul always talk about, and I completely agree with, is the number one route I see to competing against them here is just that product differentiation. If you're doing something that nobody else can buy at another retailer, and you're designing it, you're doing the R&D, people can't get that from Temu. They're going to stick with your brand. But if you're, that value proposition where you're competing on price, you're going to lose it.
Hmm. And when you look at the people who are buying as well, it is becoming more and more a cross section of the community. Where I think Shein was initially just like young people, but now you see people all ages, and particularly men. I'm buying a lot from Shein as well, which is really interesting. And I think they also they're less retailers than actually having like a huge data play, I think, as well. When you think about
Yes.
Shein in particular, like they collect all the trends, they understand what's trending, and then they work with suppliers, a supply chain, which can manufacture things at very, very short notice in relatively small quantities as well, and
Yeah.
very quickly. So they can jump on these trends. So when you think about high fashion, where you see something on the runway and you want to imitate that, you can actually have that look within a couple of weeks, if that, on Shein because of how their data and their infrastructure is all set up. And that makes it really hard for a lot of fashion retailers who are just jumping on trends to compete with that, where you almost need to be able to be the trend or set the trend, in order to be
Exactly.
able to survive. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You need to have that product that then Temu and Shein go and copy. You need to be that
Mm.
leader.
Yeah. And do you think that the appetite for cheap is going away anytime soon?
Oh, when is it ever? Even in the environment that we have today, like price consciousness has always been one of the number one players. Even though people say that they are led by sustainability, when you look at those priorities, price still outweighs sustainability. Always has.
Yeah, sustainability is a really funny one because like I was speaking with Alice Cooper, I should say, from Appliances Online at Online
Mm,
Retailer, and we were talking about sustainability and the fact that people have said for a while that sustainability is really important. Like Gen Z, millennials have been saying sustainability is really important, but they're not willing to make that trade. They're not willing to trade because there is a premium which you have to pay to be able to be sustainable. When cost of living dictates that you should opt for cheap. Having said that, though, I'm very interested to see what happens with upcoming regulation, whether it be the federal government's circular economy initiative, or whether it's the seamless initiative, which is going to actually look at more sustainable business practices, including textiles and how textiles are produced, whether that's going to affect our behavior. And as Paul often says, like, is it something which we're going to need to look at actually, having a higher levy on these products which don't meet certain criteria. My fear, though, is that it will trigger a trade war with China, and we're probably going to lose that one, I'd say.
Yeah, I think you're right on that too.
So, Alex, as a Temu shopper, what have you bought from Temu?
Well, that's the thing, is like the variety is just unreal. So just recently purchasing a house, doing all that whole nesting, so kitting out the kitchen, kitting out the fridge, so anything from home organization through to what was some random ones like face masks and beauty tools. But what I will say is that what I'm buying from Temu, I would have bought a cheap solution anyway. It's not like I was going to get something that's really expensive and then opted out to something like Temu. For those products that I'm willing to pay a premium for, I still will. But for those products that we just are trying to find that deal and just trying to make the house a home, it's a go-to. And I think also, just going back to that point of they've got a really strong male shopper, is they have the LED lights that you can put under your car and all of those fun flashy bits that isn't typically what you'd see a female shopping for, but we know that the guys are into that kind of stuff and they will opt to Temu for that cheap solution.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of things which are commoditized. And just like you said, if it's something which is commoditized and doesn't really matter, like let's say, a dish drying rack for your kitchen, you're not really going to spend $100 on it. Like, yes, you could go to Howard Storage. Is even Howard Storage even around? Maybe it is. Maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
Sure.
They would be hurting a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, would you go to that option and pay $50 for one, or would you just go to Temu and just buy one for like $1? Buy like 6 for $5, something like that. And I think that's the trading which is happening, where if it's a product which is completely commoditized because there is no functional or even aesthetic difference, why pay that premium? But yeah, you're right. It's like, with products where you can kind of own that. And I think Appliances Online, great example, where they're not the only people who sell their products, but they wrap it with the experience. They wrap it with the customer service, which allows them to charge that premium. I think there is still a place to do that if you can figure out what that competitive advantage is, which you can wrap your product in. And one thing which Temu and Shein can't compete with is obviously having local support, local returns, local service. So maybe that's an opportunity depending on the product. But yeah, if it's just like a molded plastic widget from China, it's hard to compete against that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I'm not sure if you're familiar too much with their returns, but they have this principle where you get free returns if you don't like a product or if it's faulty, you just get to keep it. So I find that an interesting, you get the money back, but you get to keep it. Now, obviously very problematic, kind of reminds me of Uber Eats and DoorDash back in the day, where you'd say your food was cold and they would give you the refund knowing full well it wasn't. But that's how
those were the days.
Yeah, exactly. And people
it's
abuse
like the customer
it.
service was amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, people abuse it and it goes away, but there's always those early adopters. But from that sustainability piece, like, what's more sustainable? Me holding on to an item that I don't like and then I donate or I re-gift or I repurpose, versus me sending that back over to China or to over wherever the distributors are, and all those carbon emissions that come into that play too.
But not just that, also the cost of them actually having to handle it and
exactly
clean it, repack it. It's just not worth it, particularly if they've just sold it to you for like $5.
Yeah,
the cost of getting it back is going to cost more than that, particularly if they're paying for the shipping as well. So do they do that on every item on Temu, or is it just certain below a certain value?
I believe it's below a certain value, but it's pretty loosey-goosey. At the moment, they're not being too picky. They're just trying to grow market share, and they're doing it really well.
I get asked often, what is their business model? And my thought around that is that their business model is not actually to make money. And it is just purely just to get the factories working again. you've got a slowing domestic consumer spending in China, people aren't buying the local things, so they need to export as much of it as possible to keep people working. So that's that's what I've thought, because it just, like, economically, it doesn't actually make sense how the business model works.
Yeah. Oh, and even things like, let's say you're an Australian business that stocks Chinese manufactured goods and your business is slowing down in Australia. Again, that distributor in China has lots of products that they need to get rid of. So I think, yes, it's domestic, but I actually think it's also their international wholesalers that are bleeding up into that strategy too.
Yeah. All right, moving on. That's probably enough on Temu. We talk about Temu a lot, so I'm going to move on from that, because I'm sure Paul and I will be talking about it next week. Is
Yeah.
Mosaic Brands. So Mosaic Brands recently hit the news. So Mosaic very recently appointed a new CEO. So Erica Berchtold, former CEO of The Iconic, and a fantastic operator, and a wonderful person as well. Recently appointed as CEO very recently, but last week they hit the news for all the wrong reasons, namely that they requested a trading halt, which, for those who don't know the markets too well, means that they applied to the ASX to essentially stop providing sensitive information, communications to the public, while they underwent a bit of a restructure, which would affect their share price. And what happened is that they've called the trading halt, and now they have started trading again, and the shares are down to a very low amount. I can't actually remember the exact number off the top of my head, but it doesn't seem that they are. What do you think's happening with a brand like Mosaic? They've been around for a while. They've been a bit of a bastion in this space. But to see a brand that size suddenly encounter such headwinds, is this just a reflection of where the industry currently is at, or is there something else at play?
Yeah, look, I just find this one incredibly sad. Like, it's just disheartening to see Australian heritage brands go down this path, particularly, again, just going back to what we spoke about earlier with that really strong brick and mortar presence. I was just doing some research before this. I think they've got over 700 stores in Australia, which is just a massive footprint. So it's going to be difficult for them to turn around quickly. No doubt Erica was aware of the job that she had when joining the team, and she's an amazing leader. So I hope that they do kind of turn things around quickly. Nobody likes to think about director's duties or fiduciary duties, so my skin crawls when I saw that they're in those safe harbour provisions at the moment. That's nasty stuff.
Yeah, and their share price is down from the year high of 20 cents down to just under 4 cents currently. So taken quite the tumble. So 75% down from their year high, which is quite down from their pre-COVID high of $3. Look, and I think part of it as well is that when you look at their brands, they've got Noni B, Rockmans, Millers, Katie's. I know I'm not their customer. I'm not their target market. My mum might have been. But I look at those brands and I think, I can't tell them apart. I don't know what's the difference between them. And it's quite often you'll go to a Westfield or a Vicinity and they've got 2 or 3 of those stores there. So like you say, they've got quite the retail footprint, but at the same time, they're all targeting the same customer. And I'd imagine you would see the same woman walk into each one of those stores. So they're almost cannibalizing themselves by not having clear enough differentiation. And this goes back to what we're saying about, and even what Nike have been saying about retail, like undifferentiated, boring retail, will die. And I fear that this is what's happening here, that there's just not enough of a clear value proposition, particularly in the face of discounters or brands like Shein, for instance, who are coming in here and offering a completely differentiated product at a much lower price, whereas you've got this mid-market, middle-of-the-road product and brand for middle-aged women, that it's just hard to look at them and go, okay, they've got something different. Like, there's a reason for me to go there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't see much brand differentiation at all. And I think what's interesting as well is, if you go onto their websites, you can access all of their inventory from one site, which seems like a very counter-intuitive strategy when then you think about their brick and mortar presence and they've got 2 stores next to each other and they're not sharing stock and they're not sharing that shopper as much as they are online. So yeah, there's definitely some gaps in their online and retail strategy.
And they were quite famous as well, like during COVID, at the start of COVID, they were one of because they didn't have a very developed online presence as well, they were also slow to capitalize on COVID, and they kind of got in late when they really
Yes.
started to ramp that up. And I think as a result of that, the investment which they made into it was arguably too little too late, or too much too late, I should say. So I
Mm.
think there was a lot of capital expenditure which went into that as well, which obviously has an impact on your cash reserves if you're investing into building out your tech platforms across all the different brands, and then also struggling with what every retailer has been struggling with for the last 12 or so months as well, which is the cost of living crisis and just generally lower consumer confidence as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then thinking about, yeah, their type of shopper, I think that they say they target women over the age of 50. Post COVID, what does that online sale look like compared to in store? And are they making the most of that platform, making it easy for these shoppers to get what they're looking for quickly?
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. That's where Searchspring comes into it.
Yeah, well, definitely some search problems on site. I think I was on Moni B and I searched for garden and pot plants come up. You just don't expect Noni B to be stocking pot plants and gardenware, do you?
Yeah. When you said garden, I was just thinking about Bunnings and they brought back the bluey garden gnomes
Yeah,
the
good.
other week.
Yep.
And they came out on a Saturday morning, very early on Saturday morning. They were sold out by like midday all around the
Unreal.
country. And families were going absolutely mental about it, about how why didn't they buy enough? And I was like, my wife was freaking out, going, why didn't they buy enough? They were sold out. I said, they bought enough. They bought
Yeah,
enough. They knew what they're doing.
yeah,
You got to
genius.
sell out.
Yeah, you got to sell out. Everyone loves the nostalgia of that piece for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Speaking of, well, not really nostalgia, but we're going to talk about some other, I guess, not legacy brands, but definitely brands who are very well known within the Australia space. And we're going to be talking about Culture Kings and um, Princess Polly. So their parent company, AKA Brands, which Princess Polly, Culture Kings sold to AKA Brands, which is a US company who've been trading over there, and they've been doing incredibly well in the US, I should say. So Culture Kings and Princess Polly both have reported increases in sales in the US market, particularly Culture Kings, which has grown more than 19% in the last quarter to $95.3 million in the US, which is phenomenal. And I think the experience they have in their store in the US, particularly the Vegas store, have you seen the videos from the Vegas store? It is like unreal. It is like right in the heart of Vegas. It is gigantic. It is gigantic. They've
Yeah.
got a full-size basketball court there. They have like appearances from like guys like Shaq. They've got athletes, rappers coming in all the time, doing meet and greet signings. It's really the place to go when you're there. Just like a lot of Culture King stores are and were, back in the day here in Australia. They've built that in the US, and that's a model which works really well there. So they've
Yeah.
seen the brand grow over there. But however, in Australia, that growth hasn't happened. Where in fact the group AKA Brands has actually seen an 11.5% drop in revenue across the Australian market through the first 6 months of 2024. Now, is this a sign of is this a sign of the brands kind of reaching their maturity point, or is it more just a reflection of, again, where the market is?
Yeah, look, I think it's an interesting one because I'd love to see a breakdown of this percentage per brand. Is it Culture Kings? Is it
Mm.
Princess Polly? Is it Petal and Pup? Princess Polly and Petal and Pup makes a little bit more sense to me than Culture Kings does. Just from, I think, going back to those conversations around Shein, right? Like, we know that they are that lower price point product. Do I think that's got anything to do with, do I think this downturn has anything to do with the cost of living crisis? No. I think it's got to do with their types of shoppers that are those bargain shoppers who we know are never really loyal. They're only
Mm.
loyal to a price.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Because I think Culture Kings, especially, they've been doing a lot of bundling. They do a lot of that anyway, but I feel that that's
Yes.
sort of ramped up. I think I'll probably get an SMS from Culture Kings at least once a week with some new offer. And there's quite a few brands who are doing that. Thankfully, Culture Kings actually has really great margins in terms of what they do, so they can afford to do that. Yeah, and I think there's also the bit of the erosion as well, where I wonder whether Culture Kings in particular, they've become so ubiquitous in that space where they were really cool to the point where now your dad's wearing it and maybe it's not so cool anymore. So, and I wonder whether
Yeah.
every brand sort of hits that, that tipping point of like, hey, you're really cool until you see everyone wearing it, and then maybe you're not so cool anymore. So I don't know. Maybe they've reached their zenith as as a cultural phenomenon in Australia, because I remember that the Culture Kings bags were actually a status symbol as well. You'd
Yeah.
see someone with a Culture King bag, you're like, yeah, great. They know what's up. But now it's like, has that changed as well? Because it just becomes too saturated. And matter of fact, are brands better off being small?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one. I mean, like Crocs back in the day, like 2005, was the coolest thing ever. And then it got to the point that my mum had them. And then it got to the point that my grandpa had them. He had like the Ugg boot version of Crocs. And then we all know that that disappeared. And now Crocs is, back, right? So it all ebbs and flows. I think on the bundle piece, look, my partner, he got sucked into the buy $500 at Culture Kings and get like a custom robe. That it's a very dope robe. It was worth the $500. But reading through that article, one of the major things they've seen is a decrease in AOV. So I don't think the bundle piece is working as much as it used to for them.
I've actually got a Culture Kings not for sale basketball over there, which I love.
Yeah, it's awesome.
They do that really well. I think in terms of providing the experience of having these not for sale products. I think there's a lot of things they've done previously to kind of create that. I remember that a while ago they did that win a Lamborghini competition in Black Friday or leading up to Black Friday, which was just like ridiculously huge. I think that was back when Daniel Small was still there. So campaigns like that, they used to do a lot more of that, and I feel that kind of mystique has kind of gone out of the brand in the Australian market.
Yeah. And look, completely anecdotal, but I feel like in terms of fashion trends, sneaker culture is taking that downturn, and we're seeing that kind of clean girl aesthetic, which is very Pinterest. It's very Uniqlo. It doesn't lend itself to the style of AKA brands as much at the moment.
That's a really interesting take. I haven't heard that one before, but I think you might be onto something there, because it's also how fashion tends to follow where the economy is as well. Like during times of austerity, people tend to dress a little bit more, more like you say, clean girl. Whereas in boom times, you tend to be a lot more louder and a little
Flashy.
more outlandish. Yeah. So
Yep.
I wonder whether that's something which we're seeing now, and that's definitely the case with some numbers I've recently looked at with other brands, where in the last 3 to 6 months there have been some shifts. And the thing about fashion is that if it's fashionable, the very nature of fashion is that it's going to be unfashionable at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like you need to get in there, make your money, and then either move with the trends or just wait long enough until it comes back around again, which it inevitably will.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, like moving with the trends, moving with your shoppers. One brand to me, Meshki, started off closer as that kind of younger party girl type aesthetic, but has grown with their shopper to now be more luxury, a little bit higher price point, more value on those kind of occasion outfits. They're not selling what they used to sell, but they're still growing amazingly. They're growing with their shoppers.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think that's really important. And you look at Crocs as well. Or Crocs in comparison have stayed still.
Yeah.
We just do what we do, right? And like you say, 2005, like Crocs were popular. Then they became the daggiest thing on earth, and now they're super popular again, and probably bigger than they've ever been.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can see like the gibbets and Crocs are just something where when you can personalize something, the gibbets though, which you pop onto the Crocs, it's
Yeah.
I see everyone doing it now. Whether it be like I'm an NBA fan, so I've got like my San Antonio Spurs and NBA gibbets and my Crocs. Yes, I own Crocs. But then I'm also a metalhead as well. And I was recently on a couple of bands' websites. I can't remember which one. I think it was The Art Is Murder, which is like a deathcore band, from Blacktown in New South Wales. They have their own gibbets. And it's just like, wow, okay. this is kind of spread into like all parts of culture. It's not just like one specific niche. It's mainstream, but at the same time, because it caters towards all the different niches, and all the different subgenres there are, you can really personalize it. And I think Crocs have now almost become this blank canvas, which you can make whatever it is you want it to be. It's become a platform for your own self-expression. Or
Yeah.
I'm potentially overthinking Crocs.
No, I think you're right. I think that you can personalize it in a way that makes sense to you, and I think that there's the fun in it. Like I've got a metalhead that comes to mind that he wears pink Crocs that are custom, but I know that he would get off a little bit in the fact that little kids are wearing it, thinking that it's their most fashionable shoes. Like there's a joke within a joke there, if that makes sense. So you can just kind of take it as seriously as you want to, and I don't think people are taking it seriously in the best way. I haven't seen
Yeah.
it, and that is, I think, that's what brings people back.
Look, and
My favorite. Sorry, I was going to say my favorite Jibbitz that I've seen. I don't know if you've seen them. They're the little Shrek ears, so the shoes actually look like Shrek.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
Yeah.
I have not seen that. I really want to see that now. So I will hunt those out next. Well, I guess just to finish off some stats, Crocs, their revenue grew 11% to $4 billion last year. And they are the fastest growing apparel brand in the world right now. Alex,
And they're so accessible. They're so accessible. That's half of the thing, I think.
Do you currently own Crocs?
No, I don't.
Might have to change that. Some Searchspring branded Crocs.
Yeah. Oh, see, I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. Yeah.
Right, okay,
that's funny.
About this. Well, we got to think about this for some merch, but at the next conference, like someone should be giving out Crocs, some branded Crocs. I think people would definitely rock those, or Jibbitz.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm going to do Ecom Nation and Searchspring Jibbitz. All right, we've got to figure out where we can get these made. All right, coming to a conference near you. Alex, thank you very much for joining me today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Mal. Thank you so much for having me. I've been a long-term listener, first-time contributor, so it's been really fun.
Really glad to have you here, and hopefully it won't be the last.
Hopefully.
Thank you, Alex.